like master's tickets. You have to wait till someone dies before you actually get a bottle.
For bourbon enthusiasts, mixologists, and bar owners alike, this might be the most sought-after bottle on earth.
I know he's very passionate about that bourbon.
That is the most glorious bourbon on the face of the planet.
Pappy Van Winkle is distilled and bottled in Frankfurt at the Buffalo Trace Distillery. It has cornered the elite must-have but impossible to find market of distilled spirits. That's thanks in part to the resurgence of the cocktail industry and the bourbon industry specifically. Production of bourbon has jumped 120% in Kentucky since 1999.
All these things have kind of combined with the global demand to give us a bourbon renaissance like we've never seen before.
But with the popularity of highly allocated bourbon like Pappy's, get used to waiting. Bourbon takes time to age, in the case of Pappy, between 15 and 23 years. And no one saw the niche production of extended age bourbon booming to where it stands today. So distillers are years behind the demand. The bottle of Pappy Van Winkle that Schubert has comes from the private collection of a friend, who says the fun of collecting highly allocated bourbon is in the search. And behind each bottle is a story, and sometimes even a fight.
Like, I remember like people pushing each other out of the way to get in the front of the line to get after bottles. People almost getting in fist fights over it. Like, to me, that's gotten to a literal level of ridiculousness that just kind of, I don't understand it.
Pappy customers aren't the only ones feeling the pinch. In February, Maker's Mark announced plans to add more water to their bourbon, thus reducing the proof, so they could avoid product shortages.
And the proof reduction, which lasted 6 days, until our customers told us it sucked, and they were right once we reflected on it. It's going to make our situation a little tight. But this is like growing trees. You just got to look long term.
That's just what all Kentucky distillers are doing right now, thinking long term. They're laying back more than 1 million barrels to age in 2012. But high demand and not enough product are only part of the challenges facing the industry. Distilleries say Kentucky taxes also threaten the long-term success of the only segment of Kentucky industries which grew during the recession.
We have 7 different taxes on every bottle before it ever reaches your lips. And that's about 60% of the retail price of every bottle goes to taxes of some type. And one of those that we've been trying to seek relief for is the ad valorem tax, which also is called the barrel tax. Kentucky is the only place in the world that taxes bourbon barrels year in, year out.
Gregory represents distillers across the state and lobbies legislators. He also urged the tax commission headed up last year by the lieutenant governor to suggest ways to offset the tax on the 4.9 million barrels of bourbon in the making.
The way that we have it crafted is that it would give us a corporate tax credit against the ad valorem tax that the distilleries pay. But that money, we would be required to reinvest it in our local facilities.
It needed to be an offset for the counties because all the ad valorem tax money goes into local schools.
And in a county like Anderson, where Wild Turkey has been operating for generations, the Lawrenceburg Distillery is a big part of the area's economy. But, as longtime master distiller Jimmy Russell says, there's a fine line between economic creation and destruction.
To get to the point to where, everything gets too high, people's not going to buy it. And when people doesn't buy, you're losing jobs and everything. You're losing state revenue and everything if people's not working.
Those distillery jobs aren't the only ones at stake. The industry also relies on the farmers, truck drivers, barrel makers, chemists, and bottle makers, which make up the trickle-down bourbon job place. So, as for what the federal government can do for the industry, well, Maker's Mark founder Bill Samuels has a message as only he could deliver.
Help, I just like for them to get off our We don't need anything we just need them to ease out of the way.
After all, the combination of federal and state taxes are far more complex than that of the taste of fine Kentucky bourbon.
Here in Kentucky, we pay a tax on each barrel that sits here and ages each year. And then we have to pay Uncle Sam, that's a big tax, $13.50 a gallon for everything that's bottled. And then every state's different. I think we have about 17% sales tax on it in Kentucky. The distributor has to pay 11% when it comes into him. And then as you buy it, the consumer purchases, there's another 6% on it.
At the end of the day, an industry that traces its roots back to the start of Kentucky isn't about to pick up and move out of the state. But it is a business, and the distilleries aim to make money as well as great tasting bourbon.